Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Ask ServiceMonster show, where you've got questions for your service business and we've got your answers. Today's question comes from Ron. He asks, "Hey Joe, what are some of the more common mistakes service business owners make, or you have made, right before they go out of business?" Great question. I like this, but I'm going to unpack it for a second because it's got a couple facets. So you asked about mistakes that we make as business owners. Man, all of us make huge amounts of mistakes. We make mistakes every single day. It's part of what makes us so good and drives us so much farther ahead. We make those mistakes, we learn, and we iterate through them. And the other part was, what are some mistakes that I've made? And I have certainly made plenty of mistakes. As I started going through them, though, I started to realize that, number one, they might not be pertinent to the last part of the question, which is right before people go out of business. And some of the mistakes I have made, I'm sure might be valuable to you guys, but they're things like I was way too early in the tech movement back in '03. If you're interested in hearing about my mistakes, feel free to leave some comments and we'll do a show about it if you're interested. But I want to stick to the heart of the question, which is the telltale sign that can tell somebody, are you headed towards failure? Are you headed towards shutting down your business? And I think that's a really fascinating question, so let's dive in. So I put together 6 of the most common factors that I see business owners doing before their demise. Number 1, giving up too early. Like, I get it, like, business is hard. Entrepreneurship is not for everybody. But this industry has a 20% per year churn, meaning that businesses that exist today, 20% of them will not exist this time next year. And that's a bigger number than you're normally going to see. Why is that, though? Obviously, there's a lot of different companies at play here, different people to start businesses, and the lower the barrier to entry, the easier it is to start a business, the more likely it is any schmo is actually going to start a business. So I get it. Business ownership is not for everybody, and you might have to go through that journey a little bit to figure that out. So yes, quit because you don't feel like doing the hard work and that you're okay collecting a paycheck while working for somebody else. Quit because you know in your heart you really need to be doing something else or following some other dream or passion. Don't quit because you're impatient. Like, this is a massive problem I see with the younger business owners, 20s and 30s. So impatient. They want it to be yesterday. Look, I'm a 15-year overnight success. Like, that's not, this isn't a short game. It's very rare that you're going to build $1 million or $2 million business in just a year or two. So have some patience. And don't quit because you're too fancy, because you want the bling bling and drive the cars and, take those cruises and be an Instagram entrepreneur. Like, if that's what you went into business for, then yeah, get out. But don't feel like, man, I got to compete with the Joneses here and I'm not winning because I'm building a business. I mean, we've all struggled. We built them out of our garages. You use the crap that you can buy on Craigslist. Like, you move forward as much as you can with the resources that you have. But at home, yeah, suck on top ramen. Like, don't get the HBO monthly special subscription. Like, make sure the phone that you have is what you need to do the job. You see what I'm saying? Like, cut corners in your personal life to squeeze as much out of the business early on and just eat shit for years until you start to really develop something with a handful of employees that can go on it on its own. But don't just quit because you're impatient and you want to be fancy today. Number 2, the second reason why most businesses die off. They don't charge enough. This is pretty obvious. We see these guys all the time, right? You really need to focus on your margins, your costs, your COGS, and your expenses. You need to eat and breathe that stuff. Like, know how much each job on average is costing you, and are you pricing it properly to make a little overhead and profit? There's a trigger word. Obviously, a big part of that 20% churn are day laborers who have stumbled their way into self-employment. Now, I also know that's a trigger word. Don't send me emails capping on self-employment. I'm not talking about owner-operators who've made the choice to stay an owner-operator, because a lot of those guys are running a legit business, paying attention to their numbers, making sure their T's are crossed and their I's are dotted. So that's not what I'm focused on here. I'm talking about the guys who just want to charge $20 for a whole house cleaning, or, whatever they charge is completely inadequate when you consider how much you have to pay people to do the work, the amount of chemicals and equipment being used, the depreciation that's going on, the value of what you're providing to Mrs. Jones. Now, I understand why they do what they do. It's because they can get work. It's because Mrs. Jones has been conditioned by Walmart and companies like that to see everything as a commodity that can be done overseas. The value of the dollar is less, and so they ask that out of their service providers too. And it's up to you to change the mindset. So yeah, raise your prices. Number 3, and you've heard about me bitch all the time about this, you do not have effective and consistent client communication strategies. And this is bigger than just the retention, communication as a whole. If you have a good communication pipeline via email, direct mail, and Facebook and so forth, then you can use that for client retention, but you can also use that for a handful of other things that you guys don't do well, such as making sure Mrs. Jones is aware of all the different products and services that you offer. And so if you have a good open communication pipeline, you can drive messages about your business to your heart's content. Now, obviously, the way I approach things is we deliver value at least 3 times, 4 times more than the ask that we're doing, like go ahead and buy our stuff, or did you know about these specials that we have? There's a tricky balance there, but just develop the pipeline. And I don't want to hear, oh, my clients just come back to me. Bullshit. Like, I understand that you think that because the phone rings and that they say they've used you before, but you're losing huge amounts of work on the backside. And that is the real difference between a service provider moving forward with a smile on their face and one that's always struggling. That repeat rate sitting under or over 50%. So you also have to calculate it correctly. We have lots of info on that. Megan will post a link in the show notes. Number 4, they don't create a plan for their business. Now, don't be confused. I'm not talking about a business plan. Those are crap. Like 80 pages of college case study of a business that you're unlikely to know very much about. If you followed me for any length of time, you know I'm big on iterative cycles, which means you can't produce a final thing on the day that you start. It has to be incremental over time, but you do need a plan. Something that you can sit down with and say, these are my objectives, these are the goals, here's how I'm going to measure them, and here's how I'm going to hold myself accountable. As a business owner, that's a big trick, especially as an emerging, growing business. If you're used to having a boss, or if you had a boss in the past, they could crack the whip when you come in late. But for you, who's going to crack the whip for you? And so that complacency might start to set in. That's definitely not what you want. A plan will help keep you focused. Now, I understand that the service business isn't all that complicated and that you can't necessarily create like all these magical plans. And to that I say, I think you're wrong there too. You can sit down and create some things that people have never done before and come up with a plan of action. Create an epic list in your company, things that are just pie in the sky, amazing things that you'd want to do. Run thought exercises of what that might look like. If you find an epic that you really want to implement, break it down into milestones, groups of tasks that you can do to finish that milestone. And each one of those tasks can be grouped into a sprint, small pieces of work that you do over a week or 2-week period of time. Through task management, managing your sprints and managing your milestones and managing your epics, you'll have a handful of projects going on in your business that can really help move you forward, implement systems, grow your lead sources, create brand awareness, whatever you want to accomplish. Number 5, they're not defining their why. I hear it, like I'm ready to quit, guys. I'm done. Well, why did you start the business in the first place? Did you lose that? Or did you never have it? And again, this is a Simon Sinek thing. He wrote a book called Find Your Why. It was huge in the business world. He did a TED Talk. And now I'm hearing more and more people talk about this all the time. I'm seeing it on the boards on a fairly regular basis. And I had it in my speech as well, although I'm crediting Simon Sinek here. He's a speaker and author. I suggest you go check it out if you want a really deep understanding of this. But at the end of the day, you have to identify why you do what you do, how you do what you do, what is your differentiating factor, what makes people choose you over the other guy, and then what you do. And I think everybody knows what you do. You clean windows, you clean carpets. How do you do that? That's really up to you. It's not the technical aspect of the cleaning, it's that differentiating factor. And then why are you doing it? Making money can't be the deal. So anyways, go watch my speech or go read Simon. But find that why, that thing that can motivate you to get up and that make everybody in your company have a banner that you can get behind. And number 6, really a pet peeve of mine, worrying about the small shit, like focusing on ad nauseum the stuff that's completely insignificant and will seriously affect your growth. You pontificate yourself into complete stalemate. Analysis paralysis is a real deal here, guys. I had a conversation just a couple days ago with someone who sent me a list of reasons why he didn't want employees, while at the same time asking me how to scale, how to build a business. Man, like, you're gonna worry about if they quit what your unemployment rate might look like, then you're already losing. If you are gonna worry about what happens if they might steal from you, you're already losing. Like, you have to trust people who you're gonna take on your journey to help build your business. And so, I'm just giving you examples here of worrying about really insignificant stuff as opposed to putting out resumes, bringing people, actually doing the work. So yeah, pontification, like I collect a lot of data and sometimes I will, and I'm guilty of this a little myself, right? I will build it up and then I'll take action. And when I execute, I just execute. And then we do that iterative cycle. We execute, we check it out, we do some analysis, we collect more data, and then we execute again. And so moving forward is the key here. But man, having a discussion for half an hour on whether or not tattoos are important, or, I don't know, but you get the idea. The really small shit is just gonna keep you down and keep an anchor around your ankle. It's not gonna work. Now, there is a difference here between small shit and worrying about stuff and then devil in the details. There's a fine line, but reverse engineer it. Don't just sit around worrying about something that might happen if you do something and then never do the something. Like, do it and then deal with it. Iterate through and make your improvements as you go, but stop worrying about every little detail. All right, guys, 3 points wrapping up. Number 1, keep in mind that this is a list of just my observations of businesses that I've seen fail over my 15-year history. I think it's fairly accurate, and can you see yourself in any of these just a little bit? And if so, start to do some reflection. Number 2, again, self-reflection is a big deal. And so sitting down and taking time in your plan to understand where you're at, where your business is at, setting your goals and making sure your partners and your wife and your employees are all in alignment, it's a really big deal if you want to succeed. Everybody's got to be playing the same game. And number 3, get a client retention strategy. Until next time, guys, subscribe to our YouTube channel, go check out the demo, and give us a call.